Well, hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Hope you all are doing well. I am so sad that we are at the final day here, but yet here we are. And I hope that you guys have had just an incredible week and that you are excited to go and take what you have learned out into the world, out into your businesses, out into the relationships that you have with your folks, and have just allowed them to be able to learn from you and see everything that you've learned. And Mike and your team, you guys have been great this week. Thank you guys so much. And we're going to go through today all of the questions that you guys have submitted for the week. So let's just recap really quickly. We talked about what our belief system is. What do we believe? Why do we believe what we believe? And how does that shape how we exist and show up in the world? We talked about how our belief system has been shaped by different things all the way back from childhood, perhaps, how we were raised to believe about things, experiences that we've had, which we attach a belief system to. And then we talked about when we're thinking about things, these negative thoughts that come into mind and how those are coming from a deeply rooted place in our mind that show up as saboteurs to try to make our decision-making process work against us, right? We talked about the high positive intelligence and the low positive intelligence as it pertains to what our brain's positive intelligence score is. It's just how well your mind is serving or sabotaging you. And we talked about knowing our enemy, our minds, and understanding how our minds work. And we introduced these wonderful powers that we have equipped ourselves with when we came out of the womb, these 5 sages: the explorer, the innovator, the navigator, the activator, the whatever. There's one more and I forget it right off the top of my head. And we talked about the empathizer, and we talked about how we use those sage powers when we have our thoughts, right? And so then yesterday we went all the way through the cycle of a thought comes into our mind. And as that thought is coming into our mind, we begin to fully show up and fully decide what we're going to do with our life. And how we do that is by recognizing who these saboteurs are and wondering and knowing who is present, which saboteur is present, and identifying. And we're going to talk about this because this is quite a lot of questions came over this. Knowing which sage we need to activate to help us to remedy a situation or to overcome that thought. And then how do we keep those processes of how we think and how we choose and how we align our actions, keeping our emotions in check, to align with our goals, to align with our purpose, to align with our why, to align with all of the things that give us purpose and meaning in our life, right? And you heard me say this on Monday, that for those of you who are business owners and you're looking for strategies and you're looking for that magic pill, I told you very first and foremost on Monday, there is no magic pill. It is about changing our mind and now training our mind to work for us and to not work against us. And that our mind in and of itself is the strategy. Because I believe, friend, you have everything inside of you right now, today, to become all that you require to be, to learn all the things that you need to learn, to grow in the ways that you need to best show up for your business or your family or your friends or for the relationships that are most important to you, and mostly to be accountable and responsible to yourself for the life that you are living, because you are the only one living it. And that is where I believe all of us can be and should be doing what I've coined ball out, building and living a life we love. So many of us build our lives, all of our lives over time, but we never stop and actually live it. And so then we realize we don't really love our life. And that's what I've been longing for you guys to truly understand and get in your mind, because it does not matter how many courses you buy. It does not matter how many coaches you have. It does not matter how great your business is, how much revenue you have coming in, how great your employees are, how fabulous the people around you are. If you are not aligned with what you need in your life, and if you are living this internal battle of which none know about, it's impossible for you to show up to truly live the life that you're trying to build and love that life that you have built. So that is what we've really been talking about this week. And several of you have already reached out to say, okay, I need to take this offline and do some more work. And I really appreciate you all for trusting me to have those conversations. And I don't take that lightly. And I had somebody mention to me last night, why didn't you offer a bigger thing to sell yesterday after the class? Because for me, and this is something you see a lot on Masterclasses online, right? They do a few days of teaching and then they come in with this big sell. And I'm not against that. I'm not against it. It's a business model. But what is so ingrained in me this week has been to give to you the value you need to see the value that you are, to see the value that you hold in the world around you, because the people in your sphere of influence are waiting and banking on you to show up in a way that will only resonate with them in the way that you can do. And it will only change the trajectory of their life by hearing the words in the way that only you can say it. And you have that power to do that. Remember, I told you about how I had to borrow beliefs from my family until I could believe those in myself. And so if you need to borrow the fact that I believe in you until you can believe in yourself, please feel free to do that. And please reach out to me and share your story with me. And Mike, your team, we're going to talk a lot about this next week when we're back together, of how do we now go and implement this. So some of these questions that your team has submitted, we're going to be able to talk through thoroughly. But I want to first kind of go through the buckets of questions that you guys have. We're going to answer some questions about your beliefs, because you guys had questions about that. We're going to answer questions about the reticular activating system. You guys had a lot of questions about that. We're going to talk about the questions you have around saboteurs and knowing them a little bit more. And then we're going to talk about how I've labeled it, bringing thoughts into submission, because you guys have a lot of questions about that. And then the last bucket we have is staying on track to reach your goals. Okay. So those are going to be the buckets of questions we answer. So I may not get to every one of these questions, but if you are on my mailing list, I promise you that I will bring up all of these questions and submit to you a Q&A that you guys will be able to have and utilize for your knowledge just from being in this class this week. So a couple of the questions that we have regarding beliefs, that how do I identify my belief systems that are deeply ingrained, but not immediately obvious? Not immediately obvious. And so one of the things that I would say to this is, when you think about the areas that may not be obvious or your belief system, where do you feel stuck? Where do you feel like you just don't really have an idea one way or the other? You could take it or leave it. How do you handle journaling your thoughts sometimes? A lot of times when you don't have a clear path, a lot of times writing it out and writing out whatever the thoughts are, even if they don't make sense, can begin to bring to surface something that may be deeply rooted, that is difficult for you to talk about, or maybe something that comes up to the surface that you just didn't know how to articulate in such a way. So that would be one of the best places that I would start for you. And we've talked about this. Once I recognize a belief, what are the practical steps I can take to dismantle this belief with a more empowering belief? So in your workbook, guys, and I don't remember which page it was on, but there was a little grid and it has 3 little boxes in it. And one of them is to first say what your limiting belief or what your uncertainty is. And then now, based off reframing, right? Reframing and reshape, I think, is the middle bucket. What are the sage powers I can use? What are the saboteurs that are popping up when I have that belief that doesn't align with who I know I am? and recognizing who those saboteurs are, and then recognizing, okay, if I can implement this sage, if I can implement the explorer, and instead of being resentful or defensive, I could say, huh, that really cuts to the knife, cuts to the core like a knife to me. That really feels prickly a little bit. Can you be an explorer instead of being defensive and say, what about what I'm hearing or feeling or thinking impacts why I'm feeling this way? What about that am I not comfortable? What about what that person is saying to me doesn't resonate, doesn't feel good? And then you can begin to determine if that's just a sabotaging thought, or maybe there is something within you that is restless. And what someone is saying to you may open up your mind and expand your horizons to see that maybe what you think about something, maybe there's more to it, or maybe you have changed your mind. Remember, I told you guys there's a lot of things that I believed 10 years ago just about the world around me and life that I don't really subscribe to anymore. And that's okay. And then there's things that I never thought I would believe 10 years ago. And now that I do, just from my experiences in the world, from learning, from growing, from reading, from expanding my knowledge base, from meeting beautiful humans who have shown me a different way to think about life. And I've been open to that. I don't want to be closed in my belief system. I want to be open to my belief system, but rooted in who I know I am, if that makes sense. Okay. So this question I love. Mike, this was from one of your managers. How do we address these beliefs with the team without coming across as critical and negative? And I love this question. So when you guys are going back and taking this, let's say some of you guys are taking this back to your sales teams, or taking this back to your customer service teams, or what have you, and you're talking through maybe goals that you have, maybe you're going to assess Q3 versus Q4 and where you need to go, how you need to end up the year, maybe setting budgets for next year. And there's a little bit of tension there, and maybe various, let's just say, very charged beliefs that are differing are going to pop up from your teams. I would ask you to ask them, in Q3, let's say we didn't meet a goal. What were some of the things that kept us from meeting the goal? What were some of the challenges you had as a leader that kept your team from operating at peak performance to be able to meet the goal? What do you believe is holding your team back? What does your team need to do differently in Q4, right? So instead of just saying the result is we didn't hit the mark and we have to do better in Q4, which we all know is what we're saying, but how to bring people to be engaged in that conversation and to welcome that discussion in a way that is not judging, that is not criticizing, but allows for a safe environment, which you as the leader are responsible and accountable to do, allows you as that leader to create that environment for the vulnerable conversations to come up from your team, not you trying to tell them they didn't do a good job and so they feel defeated, right? You want them to open up from a place of expansion, a place of, I want to learn more. So here's where my thought process was. What could I have done differently? What do you see that I don't see? Where are the blinders that I don't see about somebody on my team? And that's what you guys want to be able to eventually get to, a place of where your team is coming and asking you, here's what I think about this situation. Here's what I'm recognizing from a saboteur's perspective. And I've tried this sage. What other suggestions do you have? Because the outcome isn't changing. So hopefully that helps. And we'll get really nitty gritty with that, guys, next week. So let's move on to the reticular activating system. That's a mouthful. So the question is, and I did write one of these answers out for you guys just so I can make sure I truly give you a better definition than what I gave you yesterday. Can you explain how the reticular activating system actually filters the information, and how I can then use it to my advantage for our high pressure business environment? So this is from a buddy of mine who is in the hedge fund business. So the reticular activating system is a filter for your brain. And it's going through this filter and it's prioritizing information on what you need to be focused on. And so in this high pressure environment, you're going to have to train your reticular activating, right? Even though it's already there subconsciously, you got to train it for what you want it to look for. You need to train it for how you want it to filter information. So you can set the clear intentions of what you're looking for. You can remember we talked about visualizing the outcome, visualizing where you want to be, visualizing versus dreaming, right? And when you are telling your mind what you want to stay focused on, what you want to stay committed to, what you want to believe to be true, it will begin to filter that information to help you along the way with that. And we'll kind of get into more of that. But the biggest thing is that I would say to you is this information comes rapid fire, right? We all have that. And sometimes you have to make knee-jerk instinctive responses and decisions. But when you don't have to do that, the ability to be able to train your mind how you want it to think, what you want it to think on, will be the things that when that high pressure cooker moment comes, it will already be trained and have muscle memory to bring to the surface that which you need to make the best decision that still aligns with who you are and how you want to show up in the world. Is the best way I would answer that. What techniques can I use to reprogram? I think I just kind of answered those, but one of the things I might say is if you are a visualizer, I would, some of you write down your goals quarterly or annually, semi-annually. I would write down my goals every single day. And I would be saying those goals out loud, because that also is going to be telling your brain, and your brain's hearing what your goals are, and it's going to be looking for ways to validate what you are telling it to be true. So that would be one of the things I would do. Maybe another thing would be engaging in brainstorming sessions of things that maybe you decided years ago in situations or months ago. And now that you have more of this information on how to better do that, go back through the same exercise and say, okay, here's what I thought. Here's how I went through that decision-making process. And now that I have this wealth of information, how would I go back and handle that? And I wonder what that outcome change would have been. That might be a really good exercise for you to do. And I do that a lot as I get more information. I go back and rethink things and think, man, that would have been a much easier conversation for me to have with somebody had I had this weapon in my arsenal, not to do harm, but for us to really come together and as a team work towards a solution rather than trying to prove each other right or wrong, if that makes sense. So let's talk through the saboteurs. So one of the questions is, how do I know if it's a sabotaging thought versus one that I really need to think of that has a rational concern behind it? How I would answer that is this. When those thoughts come to mind, what did I tell you yesterday? Is that thought serving me or is that thought sabotaging me? Meaning, if the thought is sabotaging you, it's probably going to be rooted in guilt or shame, or you're not good enough, or you can't accomplish anything, right? It's going to be rooted in that judging voice, if you will, rather than the rational concerns are going to be maybe more objective. Maybe they're going to be more solution oriented. What if we did this? I wonder what would happen if we were able to do that. That might be a better way for you to see the difference. Does the negative thought make you feel badly about yourself? Or does the thought make you realize there might be another way to do something? There might be a better way to handle a situation, because the thoughts are meant to equip you and help you by giving you information to make the greatest decision, not to harm you or hurt you or make you feel bad for decisions you made before. So that's how I would answer that question. Let's see. So, okay, what strategies can I implement to silence or manage my most persistent saboteurs, especially in stressful situations? So, I think a lot of people would say the deep breathing, the mindfulness, those kinds of things. But I like the fact that I know the saboteurs. And I will tell you, I've even named my brain. I have a name for my brain, and her name is Margot. And when Margot and I are not jiving, I know Margot has come to the surface because Margot is coming from a place of selfishness. She's coming from a place of past resentment or XYZ. So the other thing I do, in addition to identifying Margot has come to the conversation, is identifying which saboteur has shown up, right? Remember that circle I gave you guys, which saboteur is present, and I will name it. And a lot of times now, especially if I'm home alone, I think other people, if they saw me, as much as I talk to myself, they might think I'm crazy, but I will tell myself, no, stop it. That is not healthy. That ship has sailed. We've made the decision. It's over. We're done. We're moving forward. And a lot of times that thought process and that thought decision, I should say, allows the thought process of negativity to go out the window. And guys, this may sound really simple, but I am telling you, this exercise of what we're talking about in the implementation is so incredibly profound. Okay, how do I support our team in recognizing and overcoming their own saboteurs without stepping on them? One of the things I think, and I touched on this, I would say, is create that environment of open communication. Create that environment where when they're not always hitting on all cylinders, you are there to not just manage them as a manager or lead them as a leader, but you're also there as a coach. And you know that you're there to support. What does a coach do from the sideline when there's a timeout? It brings everybody back in. Let's reassess. Let's regroup. What didn't work well right there? What aren't we jiving on? What's not happening? And it's objective, it's solution based. It's not attacking that person. It's looking to say, okay, how can we operate differently? How can we make a different decision in the future? How can we make a better decision that will help you be the best person you're trying to be as you're looking for that promotion in the future? What could you have done differently? Because I will tell you, when an employee makes a mistake and they know it's a mistake and a costly mistake often, you probably don't need to make them feel any worse about themselves than they already do. But what you can do is help them know how to react and rebound faster so they're not sitting in that junk of bad decision. So that's what I would do. And of course, the best way you're always going to be able to relate to your team is share a story, right? I started off this week sharing a very, very vulnerable story for me, but it allowed you to see, I know what I'm talking about when I'm teaching this to you. You've got to do the same for your team. Okay, let's talk about controlling thoughts, bringing thoughts into submission, if you will. Let's see, there's a lot of questions here, so give me just a second. Okay, so a couple of these we've already kind of answered, but how do I balance the need to suppress my negative thoughts with the importance of addressing legitimate concerns or risks? So I don't know, and I apologize if I didn't make this clear. I'm not suggesting you suppress the thought. What I am suggesting is that you allow that thought to be there, but you reframe the thought. You don't just stew in however that subconscious thought just came in. And so I would say reframe the thought. I would acknowledge the thought that it's there. Again, assess where is it coming from? Who are the saboteurs that are there? You, depending upon how much you need to go down the rabbit hole, what has made that thought come into place? A different way to say, where is it coming from? And then I would also say, how can I think about this differently? The reframing piece. And I would look at, rather than saying, oh no, here's the negative thought again, I'm not doing well. It's going to take time to train your mind, right? So don't beat yourself up and don't give up on it. But when that thought comes in and you go down a little negative rabbit hole and say, okay, how can I think about this differently? How can I think about this differently and more positively in a shorter amount of time next time? Maybe you write that down. Maybe you have a journaling session on what makes this topic still continue to come up and make you think about it in a negative way. And how can I reframe and reframe and reframe? Because again, something deeply rooted may be coming up that subconsciously won't allow you to think about it in a positive way where you can focus on the solutions, you can focus on what's needed to happen rather than how you feel about it, is how I would say that. Um, how do you as a leader effectively manage and redirect unproductive thoughts? So I do visualization a lot. I just mentioned I talk to myself a lot. I'll say, stop. We're not going to even think down that road. We're not going down that road. Another thing that I love to do that I've really done a lot this year alone, more so than any other time, is I will always write down wins from the day. They may be small wins. They may be very small wins, but I will always write down wins from the day so that I have a book that is nothing but wins. And so when I am having a mood or when I'm in a funk or when I'm not able to really activate the reticular activating system in the most positive way as quickly as I want to, I will pull that book out and look at all the wins and say, okay, Darla, you're going to be fine. We just have to think through how to solve this problem. And it gets me off of the poor me, or why does everything keep happening to me, or why is the world out to get me, which it's not. It's not. But what that thinking does is allows you to place blame on everybody else and keeps you from being accountable and responsible. And looking at those wins, it makes me realize, okay, Darla, pull yourself up. You're okay. And allows me to be grateful for the fact that I am not dependent upon what everybody else does in the world. I am responsible for my life and I get to choose what I do with this moment. I get to make the best decision for me. And it's based off wins, which lets me know by looking at those previous wins, I can trust my decision-making process. I am capable to come up with a solution, even if I'm the only one that can do it, because I've done it before. And so then I'm training my brain. Yep, she's a problem solver. She looks for solutions. So when those come up again, problem solver, looking for solutions, and it's filtering through that thought process. So that would be the biggest thing I would suggest to you. And again, it happens over time. Remember, guys, I have been working on this class for 6 months, right? And prior to that, I had been doing studying on the mind and how the mind works and operates for probably a year and a half prior to that. So this is a lot of work that's been done in this, right? So it's not like you're just going to immediately have 0 errors. You're still going to have errors, but can you have more times where the process works for you in the day than when it didn't work for you in the day? I had more wins today than I didn't. I was able to think more positively about my life than I didn't. And that improvement over time is what matters, right? That's what we're talking about. Okay. Next topic, staying on track to reach the goals. Let's see. What should I do when I notice my motivation waning despite having the clear goals that I set out? I would say be mindful about your goals and can they be fluid? Because as you learn and as you grow and as you scale and as you get better mentally and maybe physically, emotionally, spiritually, maybe what your belief system does it, the goals don't align with now what you believe. Maybe you need to adjust your goals, right? A lot of times people set these goals out for the whole year, and let's just call a spade a spade. Less than 53% of even companies achieve the goals they set out. And I think it's much less with small business owners. So I would look at it from that standpoint and say, how can I make adjustments to the goals as I am learning, as I am growing, without keeping the rigidity that you feel like you have to have because it's a goal, right? Because goals are met how? One decision at a time, one day at a time, one thought at a time, right? We just kind of answered that. The question was, how do I ensure that my goals are aligned with my values? So we just kind of talked through that. What are the key differences between short-term and long-term goal setting when it comes to maintaining focus and avoiding distraction? I would say your long-term goals are speaking more to a broader vision of who you are, who you want to become. They're the constant reminders of the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish, whereas your short-term goals are micro thoughts, micro actions that you are taking to meet a shortened life issue, if that makes sense. So you're going to be achieving little things over time that are going to help you have momentum. Remember that success loop that we talked about where, okay, I can go from 0 to 50 or 0 to 60. That's great. But if I don't have the GPS, if I don't know where I'm going, who cares? I'm going nowhere fast, right? So I say, as long as you've got your goals squared away, short term and long term, and you know where you're going, you know how you're going to get there. Like we said, you can put the gas down because you're going to move, right? You have to move in order to see in order to see change. In order to get to a different place, you have to move, right? And then once you kind of have that, that's when you'll see that momentum. So, and I think that is important because it is the connector of your short-term goals to your long-term goals and your long-term vision, your long-term outlook on who you want to be, where you want your business to be in 5 years, 10 years. Sure, there's short-term goals for the quarterly goals, the weekly goals, the monthly goals, sales goals, Mike, for you guys and your team that have to be accomplished, but it is aligned with the greater vision of where we are going as an organization, as a family, as a wife, mother, sister, husband, father, whatever it may be, that will allow the short-term decisions to help you. Okay, next topic, mindset. How long does it typically take to see a real transformation in this process? What should I expect? So I would say it's going to take forever. It's going to take until you no longer have air in your lungs. And I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for. And I care very deeply for the person that asked this question. And you know I'm looking right at you, buddy. But I think what you need to understand is that I wouldn't be looking for the end date. I would be looking for the progression, right? Because think about it this way. And I think I said this as an example earlier this week, when you're in, grade school or middle school or high school and, the boy or girl you like breaks up with you and it breaks your heart and you think it's never, your world has come to an end, right? Versus we still have problems as we get older, but we get more equipped to handle those problems because we get more tools in our toolkit. So I wouldn't be looking for an end date or a timeline for this. What I would be looking to say, as we are getting better and as we are growing and as we are moving, how can this now help us as a company scale? How now can I take on tougher projects because my team is better, my team is more equipped, and we are better able to provide real solutions that will help other businesses move the needle in their revenue, move the needle in their profitability, move the needle in their efficiency, in their process improvement plans. So the more you're able to progress as a leader, as you and your team, as you are every single day implementing this strategy, which is your mind, to stay as conscious as possible and not operate so fully in a subconscious state or on autopilot, the more you're going to see that progression, and then the bigger those progressions are going to be. So instead of just saying, okay, I've just moved it a little bit, you're going to start to see catapultic. I don't know if that's a word. You're going to see the changes catapult, the results catapult for you and for your team. So I hope that answers your questions. And then, but I would say your persistence and willing to do this daily, being mindful to do this daily. I would say looking back, maybe daily, maybe weekly for a while until you can do this monthly and know you're consistently doing it, looking back over your progress. One of the things I do with a couple of my clients who really are in an industry where it can be an up or down day, it's finance industry, is we have, and this is going to sound really, really cheesy, guys, but we created a document for them that has the emojis of the different facial expressions. And for 30 days, we had him and his sales team track where they are with this, and these traders track where they are with this. And what we realize is your day is based off how you feel, based off what the market's doing. The market's going to do this, historically shows it. How are you going to stay like this so that even though the outcomes may not be what you had hoped for you and your clients or for your funds, you are learning to stabilize and regulate your emotional state. And so we did a visualization of looking at it. And the days when they had the hardest day, they were in the worst mood. The days they had the better days, they were in a better mood. So don't overcomplicate this, I guess would be what my advice to you guys would be. Don't overcomplicate it. Allow it to happen and give yourself grace. Just you can win the I don't know, Super Bowl and lose 2 of the 16 games, right? You just got to keep going. Got to get back out on the field when it doesn't go right. When you mess up one day, you just got to get back out there, and you've got to give yourself grace and allow yourself, from a solution standpoint, from an objective standpoint, not from a judging standpoint, look and see, how could I have done better that day? How could I have done better yesterday? When did it start to go off the rails yesterday? From an objective view, from a solution-based view, not from a judging view. I just answered that question, so I'm not going to repeat that one. What role does self-compassion play in changing your mind, and especially for higher achievers who are the most critical? Great question. So I would say, and I kind of did this, but the empathy and compassion that you give yourself, right? We ask you to give others compassion and to give others empathy, and to see them in their situation and try to identify with them, and to understand first, then be understood. And I would do the same with yourself. I think I just kind of answered it in the sense of, okay, that didn't go well. We could have shown up better. How am I going to do that differently in the future? What created that situation where I went into a reactionary response rather than a proactive opportunity there? So that would be the biggest thing I would say. And I think the rest of it we've kind of alluded to along the way here. Next topic, implementation and accountability. What are some effective methods I can use to hold myself accountable as I'm starting to implement the strategies I've learned? So I would say, I mean, and maybe you're working with a coach, maybe you're not, and we can talk about that offline, but I would say find an accountability partner, or put in your calendar a time, maybe an alarm on your phone, to just check in, status check. Where am I at? Where am I at with mind status check, or something like that that you could use to just check in maybe throughout the day as you're starting this, to see how you're doing. I would be really strongly suggesting the journaling. Maybe you journal in the morning, then maybe you journal again at night. How did I start off my day versus what was my mind like when I ended my day? Where do I really need to be paying attention in the day where I might go awry from what I'm really trying to accomplish? Maybe if you are not the most organized person, this might be really difficult for you starting off, but maybe create more of a schedule and routine, so that you're able to identify, how does my mind go from any given day when I'm doing basically the same types of things at relatively the same times. That might give you an indication of how much your saboteurs are really taking over, how much subconsciously you're really operating, and identify maybe which sage powers you need to activate throughout any part of the day based off what's going on. But maybe keeping a consistent routine will help you identify, man, when do I get kind of frustrated? Is it after lunch, or did I skip lunch and I'm just hangry? Did I not sleep the night before? Checking some of those things will really, I think, help you identify and start to get some discipline with this exercise. How do I implement this with my family and not just in business? I strongly suggest you share what you've learned with a family member. If you've got a spouse or partner, talk to them about what you've learned. They may dismiss all of it and say, that's great, honey, that's great, but at least you did it. And so when you are starting to implement this or to make adjustments to this, and they're like, what's going on with you? You'll be able to say, this is what I've been learning. This is now how I'm able to better show up. And they may not recognize it at first, but what they'll recognize over time is the impact it has had on your relationship, maybe with your kids. Okay, how do I not react to the kids who's asking me the same thing over and over again? Mom, 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 how can I show up differently with that? And at the if there's a situation that's happened with your family, maybe sitting down as a family and saying, okay, or with your partner, team, spouse, whoever, and saying, we had this conversation about finances last week and we didn't really have a great outcome with that. I'd like to try that again. And when they're talking, repeat what you heard them say. The empathizing, try to relate to them, try to understand them rather than react. Learn to respond instead of react. So those would be some of mine that I would start with. Can you recommend any tools or resources for tracking progress and ensuring that these changes stick long over time? I'm happy to try to find some apps for you. I don't have any right off the top of my head. This was one that just got texted in. What I will say is don't overcomplicate it. Get a notebook, get a journal book, get a piece of paper, get the notes on your laptop, and start to put those in. If you've got Outlook, there's notes in that. I think Google Gmail even has a place where you can put notes. You put it in Word, do whatever you have to do. Don't overcomplicate a tracking piece, right? What I would say is keep something close to you that you can grab to write in or to type in as often as you can. And you probably always have your phone with you. Let's call a spade and be honest with that. And I think that will help you really just grab it, put it in there and put it away and make that notification. But I will email you and try to get you some apps that I think. There's some great books that I think would be great for you guys. And I will send this out as well later as well for that. And you don't have to read a whole book all the time. Commit to reading 5 or 10 pages a day, or maybe you read 20 pages a week of something to just learn and grow. Your brain is eager to learn. It wants to learn. We barely use any of our mind, right? There's this huge thing up here that is your strategy that is begging for you to teach it. But I think Atomic Habits is great. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a good one. Let me go to my book list here and I'll see if I can get you guys some other ones here. I think the 5-Second Rule from Mel Robbins is a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. There are a lot of people who ask me about, what do you do this, millionaire morning and all this kind of stuff. I'm not the biggest morning person, just to be candid with you. I think you have to find the system that works for you and the time of day that you are best able to be present for you. A lot of times people love to work out. My husband loves working out in the morning, and God bless him. Theoretically, I would love to work out in the morning, but I also love working out at the end of the day and just working out the day in the gym. And so for me, that's great too, because in the morning I am barely coherent and I'm just getting to the gym and doing whatever they tell me to do. But at the end of the day, my mind is pumping, right? And so when I'm active, the endorphins are flowing and I've got ideas coming out the wazoo in that. So do what works for you. Just because you've seen everybody do it, you can take the ideas of concepts of what they're doing, but when they're doing it, let it work for you. Don't complicate it. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's a new book. If you have not read Worthy by Jamie Kern Lima, you need to read Worthy, because it's basically going to talk about your belief system. And you, no matter what changes, if nothing we've learned this week gets implemented into your life, you are still just as worthy as you were from the day you came out of the womb to have and be and get all that you are worthy of having and being. But you're worthy just as you are. It's not because of your business. It's not because of anything else. You're worthy because of who you are. And that's a phenomenal book. If any of you are struggling with self-doubt or insecurity or shame or guilt, you need to read that book. That's a great book. Let me see. For any of you that are Audible people, there's a great little book that's free on there. And it's called How to Be More Intentional with Your Time. That's a great book if you're looking to get organized. Words are hard. The book that a lot of the content came out of from the saboteurs and sages is called Positive Intelligence. It's literally the name of the book by Shazad Shamin. That's that book. I do think Malcolm Gladwell's book, Thinking Without Thinking, or The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, is a great book. He's got an interesting perspective of it. How to Train Your Mind is another one, exploring the productivity belief system. It's a great book. There's some oldies that I'm trying to get to that are just really, really good. I think Indistractable is a great book. Let me see. I'll put this list together for you guys of some books for you. I think regardless of what you believe religiously, I think The Four Agreements is a phenomenal book to help you understand how to understand other people. I think that is a phenomenal book. I think Adam Grant's book, Think Again, should be a must read for everybody that is working in even if you're a business owner, yes, but if you are an executive and you have teams of people and you are an employee, I think everybody should read that book. That's a winner right there. Yeah, so I'll put some of these books together list for you guys and send it out when we do the Q&A piece of that for you. Trying to see if there was any other one that came through on the text here. Give me just a second. Maybe for those of you who might want a religious book, a Christian book, there's an incredible book by Joyce Meyer. It's called The Battlefield of Your Mind. And I think that is a must read for everyone who believes spiritually with that and is a Christian. I think you should have to read that book. That's a phenomenal book. Yeah, I'll keep going through this list for you guys and see. If you're looking to struggle with what you believe and what you want, I think Dream Big by Bob Goff is a phenomenal book. That's a great book. He's awesome. And if you get that book, there's actually his cell phone number is in the back of that book, and you actually get to text him and send him your goals and your dreams, and he actually kind of responds to you. It's really, really cool. So I think that the biggest thing for you guys to understand is as you're starting out on this journey of this activity of training your mind, just remember you're in training. You're not going to go out today and train one day and go run a marathon tomorrow. It takes months and months and months and months and months to get ready for a marathon. And that's if you're in good shape, right? So it takes people years to train for the Olympics. So give yourself grace that this is going to take time. It's going to take time until the day you die to consistently learn how to improve and grow and be better in this. But I think if you will do this, it's going to really help you to be able to get these obstacles out of your way so that you can get on your way to building and living the life that you love. So for those of you who I'm not yet connected to, you'll mainly see me on LinkedIn. So go find me there, Darla Bonk Consulting. I am on Facebook. Every once in a while, I'm on Instagram, not a lot, but you can also find me on my website at darlabonk.com. I also have a podcast called On Your Way, where we do exactly that, help you overcome the obstacles in your way so you can get on your way to building and living the life you love. And it is so crucial to remember what we're working towards and what our why is and what our purpose and meaning is, because life is going to happen, right? That when you can allow this metamorphosis of your mind to take place and train your mind, the sky is the limit for you. So thank you guys so much for being with me this week. We've had 5 days together, 5 hours of time together. And so I hope this has sunk in for you guys. If you have any other questions, you guys can email me after. And if you have not joined my email list, please reach out to me at darla@darlabonk.com. And you can just put in the subject line, opt in, and we will get you going. So thank you guys so much. Make it a great day, and we'll talk to you guys soon.